You know that sickening drop in your stomach when someone you trusted with your career finally shows their true colours, not in some dramatic blow-up, but in one casual, heartbreaking little demand that makes everything click into place. Yeah, that's exactly where my story begins. I didn't scream or throw anything. I just sat there in my glass-walled office overlooking the sparkling Salt River and the rows of luxury waterfront villas staring at the message on my screen while a cold, bitter laugh built up in my chest. Because after 2 years of late nights taking the fall for his sloppy decisions and swallowing every bit of fake mentorship he fed me, my boss had finally handed me the proof I needed that the entire empire he had built was nothing but smoke and mirrors. My name is Sadie Blackwell. I am 28 years old. I am a senior financial compliance specialist at Horizon Prestige Developments, one of those sleek, high-end real estate investment firms headquartered in the prestigious waterfront corporate enclave along the Salt River here in Phoenix. You know the kind of place, floor-to-ceiling windows, private villa-style executive suites for the top brass and enough polished concrete and desert landscaping to make every visitor feel like they have already made it. I had poured everything into my role there, the kind of quiet, meticulous work that keeps multi-million-dollar projects from collapsing under their own tax return discrepancies and regulatory red flags. My boss, Ryan Fletcher, had spent the last year calling me his secret weapon, praising my eye for detail in every team meeting, pulling me into closed-door strategy sessions like I was the only one he could trust. I had believed it. God, I had actually believed it. Until that afternoon. We had just closed a massive mixed-use development deal that morning, 20 waterfront villas, retail space, the works. The conference room had been buzzing with champagne flutes and forced smiles, while the CEO clapped my boss on the back and talked about record bonuses. I was back at my desk by 2 o'clock reviewing the final tax filings one last time before they went to the state and IRS. That is when the internal messaging system pinged. It was from my boss. Transfer successful on the supplemental vendor adjustment. Client funds cleared without issue. Great work locking that down for the team, Sadie. This keeps us all in the black. Let us talk bonuses tomorrow. I read it twice. Then 3 times. Because I knew exactly what that supplemental vendor adjustment really was. 3 weeks earlier, I had flagged a glaring tax return discrepancy in one of our largest client accounts, almost $250,000 routed through a shell vendor that did not exist on any legitimate paperwork. I had documented it, flagged it for review, and quietly set up an automated monitoring trap on that specific ledger line. It was bait. Clean, legal, federally traceable bait. My boss had come to me the day before, all concerned mentor vibes, asking me to just sign off and make it go away so we do not lose the client and the quarterly numbers. He had even leaned in, lowered his voice, and said, "You are the only one I can count on for this, Sadie. This is how we protect the whole team. You have got my back right." I had smiled that day and told him I would handle it. What I actually did was document every single word of that conversation on a secure personal drive, and let the system flag the adjustment if anyone touched it. And now here he was, celebrating like he had just pulled off a brilliant move instead of walking straight into federal compliance hell. I did not drop the ceramic mug I had been sipping from the one my old mentor had given me when I first started here. I just set it down very carefully, leaned back in my ergonomic chair, and let that familiar sarcastic edge sharpen in my thoughts. "Oh, sure, my boss. Let us talk bonuses. Let us talk about how you have been treating me like your personal compliance shield while skimming off the top and expecting me to lie for you." The bitterness tasted metallic on my tongue, but underneath it was something colder and steadier. I had been waiting for this exact moment. The HR manager, Vanessa Riley, had been copied on the message. Of course she had. She had been thick as thieves with my boss for months, always popping into my office with those perfectly polished smiles and little reminders about company loyalty and team first whenever I raised concerns about discrepancies. I had watched her shut down 2 other analysts who had tried to escalate similar issues. Now it all made sense. They were not protecting the company, they were protecting their own hidden dealings. I pulled up the audit log on my second monitor. The adjustment had gone through at 11:47 that morning, right after my boss's closed-door meeting with the HR manager. The timestamp matched perfectly. My trap had already triggered an automatic alert to the external compliance oversight system I had quietly looped in weeks ago. Justice, when it comes for people like them, moves swiftly in this industry. I could almost taste it. A soft knock on my open door pulled me out of the screen. It was Dylan Simmons, one of the sharpest analysts on my team, and as far as I knew, one of the few genuinely decent people left in this building. He was holding 2 iced coffees from the cafe downstairs by the Riverwalk and wearing that easy lopsided grin that usually made the long days feel a little less soul-crushing. "Thought you might need a refill after that marathon closing session," he said, stepping in and setting 1 cup on my desk. "You okay?" "You look like you just read your own obituary in the quarterly report." I managed a short, bitter laugh. "Something like that. Just got the great work text from my boss about the supplemental adjustment. You know, the one I explicitly flagged as a problem 3 weeks ago." Dylan's expression shifted, but not in the way I expected. He glanced over his shoulder toward the hallway, then lowered his voice. "Yeah, I saw the log too." "Listen, Sadie, there is something I have been meaning to tell you." Before he could finish, the HR manager herself appeared in the doorway like she had been summoned by the mention of her name. She was dressed in her usual power blazer and heels that clicked too loudly on the polished floors, her expression the picture of professional concern wrapped around something sharper. "Sadie, a word," she said, not really asking. "My boss wants us both in his office. Now, he mentioned something about finalizing the bonus allocations and making sure everyone is on the same page about the client filings." I met her eyes without blinking. The sarcasm in my head was practically screaming. Of course he does. Cannot have the compliance person going rogue when the house of cards is this close to collapsing. Out loud, I kept my tone even, almost pleasant. "Sure, HR manager. Lead the way." Dylan gave me a quick, unreadable look as I stood up, but I did not have time to decode it. We walked down the sunlit corridor that overlooked the waterfront villas, those multi-million-dollar properties our firm helped develop and sell to people who would never know how many corners had been cut to keep the numbers looking pristine. My boss's corner office was all glass and reclaimed wood with a view that screamed success. He was already seated behind his massive desk, scrolling through something on his laptop with that practiced, charming smile he reserved for people he still thought he could control. Sadie, HR manager. Close the door." He gestured like we were old friends about to share good news. "Look, I know today's numbers were a little aggressive, but we pulled it off. The client is thrilled, the board is thrilled, and those bonuses I promised, they are real. I just need you to sign the final compliance attestation so we can file everything clean before close of business. It is the last piece." He slid a tablet across the desk toward me. The document was already open. 1 digital signature and the tax return discrepancy would be buried under layers of corporate language. My heartbeat stayed steady, but the bitterness rose like bile. This was the heartbreaking demand I had been waiting for, the one that proved every late night, every "you are" my go-to person, every fake team-building speech had been nothing but manipulation. I looked at the screen, then back at him. "My boss, that supplemental adjustment you just celebrated, it is the exact discrepancy I documented. The one tied to a vendor that does not exist. Signing this would be falsifying records." The HR manager let out a soft, practiced sigh from her spot by the window. "Sadie, we have talked about this. Sometimes you have to look at the bigger picture. The whole team benefits here, including you. Do not make this harder than it has to be." My boss leaned forward, dropping the friendly mask just enough for the real tone to slip through. "Come on. I have gone to bat for you more times than you know. Do not throw the whole department under the bus over one line item. We are all in this together, right?" The sarcasm finally leaked into my voice, quiet and cutting. "Together." That is funny, because from where I am sitting, it looks a lot like you two have been running your own little side operation while expecting me to take the fall if the IRS ever comes knocking. The air in the office thickened. My boss's smile did not falter, but his eyes went hard. The HR manager crossed her arms, her perfectly manicured nails tapping once against her sleeve. I did not wait for their next scripted response. I stood up, leaving the tablet untouched on the desk. "I will think about it," I said, my tone dripping with the kind of false sweetness they had used on me for months, but I would not count on that signature coming through any time soon. I walked out before either of them could reply, the waterfront view blurring slightly as I headed back toward my own office. My phone buzzed again in my pocket, another internal alert. The trap was already tightening. The tax return discrepancy had just been flagged at the state level thanks to the automated system I had set up. My boss and the HR manager thought they were securing their bonuses and their little hidden empire. They had no idea they had just swallowed federally traceable bait. Dylan was waiting near my door when I got back, looking more serious than I had ever seen him. "Sadie, we need to talk. Privately. There is more going on here than you realize." I paused, studying his face. The colleague I had always considered a quiet ally suddenly felt like he was carrying heavier secrets than I had given him credit for. The bitter edge in my thoughts sharpened further. Great. Another layer of corporate theatre. But something in his expression made me nod and gesture him inside. "Close the door," I said, "and start talking. Because if this is another loyalty speech, I swear I am going to lose what is left of my patience." He shut the door softly, then turned to me with an expression that was not the supportive teammate I knew. It was something else entirely, something that made the entire afternoon tilt sideways in a way I had not seen coming. Dylan leaned against the edge of my desk, his usual easy grin nowhere in sight. "Sadie, I have been sitting on this for months. I am not just another analyst crunching numbers down the hall. I have been quietly working with Nora Alvarez, the senior executive who oversees internal compliance audits on a parallel investigation into exactly the kind of supplemental adjustments my boss loves to push through. The whole shining waterfront empire here at Horizon. The record-breaking deals, the bonuses, everyone is salivating over the pristine quarterly reports. It is all fake. Built on the same tax return discrepancies you flagged. My boss and the HR manager have been cycling shell vendors for over a year to make the books look flawless while skimming just enough to keep their own pockets lined and the board clapping." I stared at him, the bitter laugh I had been holding back finally slipping out low and sharp. "You have got to be kidding me." All this time, I thought I was the only one seeing the cracks, playing the steadfast little compliance soldier while they fed me that false loyalty garbage about protecting the team. "And what you have been watching me take the hits." He nodded, no excuses, just that steady look that suddenly made sense. I could not risk tipping my hand too early. "Nora and I have been building an airtight file. Your trap on that vendor line, I saw it go live weeks ago and made sure it fed straight into our secure log. You are not alone in this, Sadie. But my boss is desperate right now. The latest adjustment he just celebrated. It is the one that finally trips the external reporting threshold. Justice in this industry does not drag its feet when the numbers hit federal red flags. The vulnerability hit me then sharp and unexpected under all the sarcasm. I had spent 2 years here convinced my cleverness was keeping me one step ahead, only to learn the ally I had trusted most had been playing a longer game in the shadows. It stung. It made me feel exposed in a way the HR manager's fake smiles never had. But underneath that sting was something steadier, something that whispered I was not the fool they had tried to shape me into. I was the one who had set the actual trap. And now it had real backup. Before I could respond, my desk phone rang. The caller ID flashed my boss's extension. Dylan's jaw tightened. "That will be round 2. Do not sign anything. We have got this." I answered on speaker so he could hear. My boss's voice came through all polished charm with that undercurrent of control he wielded like a weapon. "Sadie, my office. 5 minutes. Bring the tablet. We need to finalize that attestation before the compliance window closes. The team is counting on you to keep us all moving forward." The HR manager was already in there when I walked in, perched on the edge of the leather chair like she owned the view of the Salt River villas sparkling in the late afternoon sun. My boss did not waste time on pleasantries this round. He slid the tablet across the desk again, his smile tighter now, the mask slipping just enough to show the calculation underneath. "Here is the deal," he said, leaning forward. "I have gone out of my way to shield you from the kind of scrutiny that could tank your career in this town. You sign this, we file clean, and those bonuses I mentioned, they become very real for everyone, including you. Refuse and I cannot protect you from how this looks to the rest of the department. People talk. Reputations get questioned. You do not want to be the one who held up the entire waterfront project over one line item, do you?" The HR manager jumped in smoothly, her voice dripping with that practiced concern that always felt like a knife wrapped in silk. "We are all family here at Horizon. My boss has been your biggest advocate. But loyalty goes both ways, Sadie. The team needs to see you stepping up, not tearing everything down." I felt the secondary sting of the social isolation hit, but it did not land the way it would have a month ago. Jordan Ellis, one of the mid-level analysts I had mentored for over a year, had just posted in the team thread asking why compliance was holding up the final filings. The work family was already starting to pull away, choosing the safe side of the line my boss had drawn. The withdrawal of support hit harder than I expected, not because I needed their approval, but because it confirmed how thoroughly my boss and the HR manager had poisoned the well. Dylan had slipped into the room behind me during the exchange, silent but present. My boss noticed him and his expression flickered with irritation. "This is a private discussion, Dylan." Actually, Dylan said calmly, "Nora Alvarez asked me to sit in. She has been reviewing the same flag discrepancies. Turns out the entire set of supplemental adjustments traces back to patterns only my boss and the HR manager had approval on." The room went still. The HR manager's perfect posture stiffened. My boss leaned back, but I caught the flash of panic he tried to hide behind another practiced smile. "Nora is involved." That is news to me. "Sadie, you see what happens when people start stirring up unnecessary drama. This could affect everyone's standing here." I stood up slowly, the sarcastic bite in my voice sharpening into something colder. "You mean it could expose how the whole waterfront prestige facade is nothing but numbers doctored to look real? I am done being your shield, my boss. And I am definitely done pretending this loyalty speech actually means anything when the only thing you have ever protected is your own hidden dealings." The HR manager tried one last angle, her voice dropping into that fake empathetic register they both love to deploy. "Think about your future here, Sadie. You have worked so hard. Do not throw it away over a misunderstanding." But the misunderstanding was already unraveling. My phone buzzed again, this time a secure alert from the external compliance portal I had looped in. The tax return discrepancy had just triggered an automatic state-level inquiry. Justice was moving exactly as swiftly as the system promised when the right flags were hit. I did not show them the screen. I just slipped the phone into my pocket and met my boss's eyes with the kind of quiet, bitter resolve that comes from finally seeing the whole fake empire for what it was. "You two can keep talking about family and protection all you want," I said, heading for the door. "But I am done carrying water for a house of cards that is about to collapse on your heads." I stepped out into the hallway, Dylan falling in beside me without a word. The waterfront villas outside the glass walls looked just as polished as ever, but now they felt like the perfect backdrop for the slow unraveling I could already sense coming. My boss was not going to let this go quietly, and the HR manager had too much invested in keeping their little side operation buried. The secondary whispers from colleagues were only the beginning. I could feel the pressure building, the isolation starting to creep in as people chose the safer path. We made it back to my office just as another notification pinged, this one from Nora Alvarez herself, requesting an immediate off-the-record meeting in the executive conference room overlooking the river. Dylan gave me a small nod. "This is where it starts turning, Sadie, but my boss will not go down without trying to drag you through the mud first." I sank into my chair, the sarcastic edge in my thoughts mixing with that deeper, quieter strength I had been building all along. They had controlled the narrative for so long with their false loyalty and team-first lies. Now the hidden dealings were exposed, and the only thing left was how far they would go to save their fake fortune before it all came crashing down around them. Later that same afternoon, I walked into the executive conference room where Nora Alvarez was waiting. The waterfront villas outside the glass reflected the late afternoon light, like they were mocking the whole polished illusion we sold to clients every day. Nora was already seated at the head of the long table, her tablet open and a stack of printed audit summaries in front of her. She gestured for me to sit, her expression calm but serious. "Sadie, I am glad Dylan looped you in. What you flagged on that supplemental vendor adjustment is not an isolated mistake. It is the tip of a systematic pattern my boss and the HR manager have been running for over 18 months. The entire waterfront prestige empire here at Horizon. The record-breaking deals, the bonuses, the pristine quarterly reports that have everyone convinced we are untouchable. It is all fake. Built on layered tax return discrepancies and shell vendors that exist only on paper. The core fortune everyone has been chasing is smoke and mirrors." The words landed like a quiet explosion in my chest. I let out a short, bitter laugh, the sarcasm I had been carrying for months, sharpening into something almost relieved. Of course it is. All those late nights I spent cleaning up their messes, thinking I was protecting the company while they were using me as the perfect shield. False loyalty control at its finest. They kept telling me I was the only one they could count on, the steadfast one who kept everything afloat. Turns out, I was just the convenient patsy. Nora nodded, sliding a thick folder across the table. "You are not the only one. I have been running a parallel internal review with a small group, including Dylan. We have documented everything, timestamps, approval chains, the works. Your trap on that ledger line fed straight into our secure system. The State Compliance Board is already aware. Justice in this industry comes swiftly when the discrepancies hit the federal threshold, and we are well past that point now." Before I could respond, the conference room door swung open. My boss strode in with the HR manager right behind him, both of them wearing the kind of forced professional smiles that did not reach their eyes. They had clearly heard I was meeting with Nora and decided to crash it. Victor Lang, the CEO, followed a moment later, looking mildly annoyed at the unscheduled gathering, and Marcus Hale, one of the board members who oversaw ethics and compliance, closed the door behind them. Elena Vargas, the external compliance investigator we sometimes brought in for sensitive reviews, was already on a video call displayed on the large screen at the end of the table. The room suddenly felt a lot smaller. My boss did not even wait for pleasantries. He dropped into the chair across from me, leaning forward with that practiced mentor tone that always hid the control. "Sadie, this is exactly what I was worried about. You have been under a lot of pressure, and now you are dragging senior leadership into what should be an internal team discussion. I have always had your back here. Do not make me regret pulling you into the big projects and giving you the visibility no one else would." The HR manager jumped in smoothly, her voice dripping with that fake concern I had grown to hate. "We are all family at Horizon. My boss has advocated for you more times than you know. But loyalty has to go both ways. If you refuse to sign the attestation and keep pushing these unfounded claims, it is going to reflect poorly on the whole department. People are already talking in the group chats. The team is starting to withdraw support Sadie. You do not want to be the reason bonuses evaporate for everyone." I felt the secondary sting of the social isolation hit, but it did not touch me the way it once would have. Jordan Ellis had just posted again asking why compliance was holding up the final filings. The withdrawal of support was complete, but I kept my face neutral, the sarcasm in my thoughts keeping me anchored. Family? Sure. The same family that turns on you the second the numbers stop looking pretty. Nora cleared her throat, her voice cutting through the tension like a blade. "This is not about team dynamics anymore. Elena Vargas from the external compliance firm is on the line, and the State Board has opened a formal inquiry based on the automated flags Sadie set up weeks ago. The hidden dealings are fully documented. The entire fortune this company has been parading around the waterfront villas, the executive bonuses, the prestige developments is built on falsified tax returns and shell transactions that my boss and the HR manager personally approved. We have the audit trails. The room went dead quiet for a beat. Then my boss's face shifted, the mask cracking completely. He slammed a hand on the table, his voice rising with the kind of raw panic I had never heard from him before. This is ridiculous. Sadie, you are the one who documented everything. You are the one who could have stopped this if you had just signed off like I asked. I trusted you. We all did. And now you are trying to burn the whole place down because you feel overlooked. The HR manager's composure shattered next. She stood up abruptly, her perfectly manicured hands trembling as she pointed at me. You have always been difficult, Sadie. Always questioning, always pushing back. We gave you every opportunity, and this is how you repay the team. My boss has been carrying this place on his back, and you are throwing it all away over some petty disagreement about one line item. Elena Vargas's voice came through the screen, calm and professional. The discrepancies are not one line item. They total well over $2 million across multiple quarters. Federal authorities have been notified. Suspensions are effective immediately pending full investigation. My boss's emotional breakdown hit like a wave. He pushed back from the table, his face flushing red as the reality sank in that the fake empire he had built was collapsing in real time. You cannot do this. I have worked too hard for this. The bonuses, the deals, the reputation, everything. Sadie, please, I am begging you. Sign the attestation. Make this go away. We can fix it together. Do not destroy everything we have built. The HR manager was openly crying, now mascara streaking as she turned on him in a desperate attempt to shift blame. This is your fault. You told me to approve those adjustments. You said no one would catch it, and now you are dragging me down with you. The betrayal between them spilled out right there in front of the CEO, the board member, and the investigator. False loyalty finally turning on itself. I sat there watching it unfold, the sarcasm I had carried for so long, mixing with a profound, quiet vulnerability. I had poured 2 years of my life into this place, believing their praise, swallowing their demands, thinking my cleverness and steadfastness would protect me. It had not. But in the end, it had armed me. The detachment I felt now was not cold or angry anymore. It was freeing. I stood up slowly, meeting my boss's desperate eyes one last time. I am not signing anything, I said, my voice steady and laced with the last bit of bitter edge I needed to release. And I am not carrying your mess anymore. You built this fake fortune on lies and expected me to hold it up. Detachment creates freedom, my boss. I am choosing mine. Nora gave me a small, respectful nod. Marcus Hale from the board spoke up quietly. Sadie, your documentation has been invaluable. We will handle the rest from here. Take the time you need. Eleanor Vargas confirmed on the screen that the swift investigation was already in motion. Warrants for records interviews scheduled for the following morning. My boss and the HR manager were escorted out by security shortly after their emotional breakdowns, echoing down the hallway as the weight of the exposed hidden dealings finally crushed them. Colleagues like Jordan Ellis watched from the open plan area, the withdrawal of support complete, but it did not touch me anymore. I walked out of that building later that evening with nothing but my personal drive of evidence and the quiet, empowered resolve I had earned the hard way. The waterfront villas still glittered under the phoenix lights, but they no longer represented anything I needed to prove or protect. I owned my story, now the steadfast, clever woman who had seen through the false loyalty control and refused to be the shield for someone else's empire of lies. 2 weeks later, I accepted a senior role at a smaller, genuinely ethical firm across town where my expertise was valued without the games. The detachment I chose that day created the freedom I had been craving all along. I never looked back. The toxic workplace family dissolved under the weight of their own greed, and I finally understood that owning your story means walking away when the price of staying becomes your peace. Thank you for listening to my story. Tell me your limit in the comments below. What is the moment you knew you had to detach and choose yourself?